His Excellency, President Jacob Zuma, spoke to the nation last night on a matter that has affected tragically fellow South Africans who had traveled to the Synagogue Church of All Nations in Lagos, Federal Republic of Nigeria. We are here just to say that our High Commissioner in Nigeria and our Consul General and other senior officials have been on the ground, are on the ground in Lagos. Let me reiterate that indeed South Africans have tragically lost lives and were amongst those affected when a building at that Synagogue Church of All Nations collapsed on the 12th September 2014. As per the instruction of our President, President Zuma, government has activated here at home a disaster management process and is treating the matter with the utmost urgency it deserves. Government understands fully the pain and anguish of affected families, and we are walking this difficult and painful path hand in hand with the families. The South African Consul General in Lagos, as I said earlier on, and the High Commission have been working around the clock on the scene, liaising with the leadership of the church and other authorities. I'm also able to confirm that an advanced team from the Disaster Management Center that I spoke to earlier on, personnel, the first group of these senior officials are boarding the aircraft in an hour or so time to Nigeria with all the expertise that we thought was needed. And we keep the lines open. The call center number, it's 012-351-1000. That's an operation center number that DICO is running or coordinating on behalf of the net joins that has been set up. We are also appealing to families who are affected by this tragedy to also help by emailing latest photographs of family members, friends, relatives who are known to have traveled to Lagos, in particular to this synagogue. Email number consular@dico.gov.za. consular@dico.gov.za. May I reiterate that our hearts go out to the bereaved families and relatives and reassure fellow South Africans of South African government's full support during this very difficult and tragic time. I thank you. Gentlemen on the second row.
Minister Paul Vecchiotto, Business Day. This team from the National Disaster, will it include search and rescue teams with, they use dogs to search for bodies and that kind of thing? And the repatriation of the bodies, what arrangements been made there? Thank you.
The team that's leaving tonight is an advanced team that should help our mission to do what they've been doing, working together with the travel agencies that had facilitated the travel of these fellow South Africans to Nigeria, to also work with whatever personal documentation that's at hand, like passports, and working together with whoever they could from the synagogue itself. So largely the group that's leaving tonight is an advanced team that would help ascertain needs. I mean, we would have doctors, we would have all expertise that's needed during this time. But what the team that we've been able to put up tonight, which is not more than 10, are really going there to work on assessment of what's needed. But also let me reassure South Africans that we do have flights almost on daily basis that can reach our people, make our people reach Lagos. Let me also be saying to South Africans that the little I know about disaster management is this building fell on Friday, the 12th of September. That is last Friday. Today it's almost evening of Wednesday. So going through the rubble, it's a thing to do, but it's going to be quite a difficult mission, as you would understand.
Yes, I intend to. Hi, Minister Wendell from Reuters. Minister, there's been some discrepancies over the death toll figure. How confident is South Africa in its figure? I think the figure they were given was 67. And is that confirmed? I mean, you actually have a sort of a matching ID document or something along those lines that confirms that person is a South African. Also, the Nigerian authorities have indicated that, according to them, there's no confirmation that South Africans have actually perished in this matter. Your comment on that, please.
Well, it's un-South African to want to get into finger pointing at the time when you deal with tragedy. Our focus at the moment is, again, before I walked into this room, we communicated with the officials on the ground, who, again, I've spoken to them more than 5 times today, confirming that with the little information that they've at hand, that is working with the travel agents on which South Africans have they facilitated travel thereof, passports that our people could get access to, meaning that they came to the figure 67 based on the information at hand. What needs to happen now is families need to arrive and say yes and reconfirm. But 67 is the number that has been confirmed and reconfirmed the whole day by our officials on the ground. And 20 was another figure given to us about those who have been hospitalized. So I am not going to go into speaking on behalf of our friendly nations' information. I'm sure they could focus on just assisting us to deal with this very difficult period.
Minister, Mercedes from SABC. There are allegations that there are about 7 South African survivors who are kept at the church. They are not being allowed to go out, and they have no contact with the embassy. Are you aware of that, and is that so?
Well, Mercedes, can we again just focus on the immediate and also trust our officials on the ground that we will be updating you on daily basis, and if there are people who are being held against their will, I'm sure our officials will be able to reach out to them in no time. In a disaster situation, the immediate attention is given to the deceased and to the injured, but not undermining the possibilities that some people are still having to be accounted for. I was urging that we we go slow on making us confirm or deny allegations. At the moment, focus on the need of the hour, that of working with the families during this very traumatic time. That's why we are appealing to families to also send whatever information that they think would be useful through the email address that we've shared with you now, and also by phone. And we will have our officials on standby 24 hours around the clock. We've actually gone to a point of beefing up the usual ops center so that we are able to respond to all the calls from all the affected family members, friends and relatives.
I'll take one more question from Cape Town, and then I'll need to cross over to Pretoria. I'll take one more question. Okay, you there.
Sorry. Annika Larson from ENCA. Minister, are you satisfied with the kind of diplomatic assistance that you're getting from your Nigerian counterparts on the ground? And are the call center that you've set up, is that working well? Are you getting a lot of calls from concerned family members? Thank you.
Let me say that the Department of International Relations and Cooperation runs an operations center even during normal days, 24 hours. The 012-351-1000 number, it's a facility or a service that's always there. For now, we've had to beef up personnel because of the volume of calls that come through. And I have personally called at 4 o'clock to check if we are adding up the numbers, if we are copying, and I was given an affirmation to the same. Are we getting cooperation? Yes, we are. The officials in Pretoria informed me that they've also had a meeting with the Nigerian High Commissioner based here in South Africa. Are we satisfied with the level of cooperation? We believe we should be getting such because we've got very cordial and good diplomatic relations with Nigeria. But at the moment, our focus should not be on my satisfaction, but on whether we are able to reach out to families and help them. It's a very, very difficult moment and tragic time we're dealing with.
Did you phone the hotline yourself, or did you just phone the person who was running the hotline?
I don't know. I don't understand the question.
Did you phone the hotline to make sure it's working, or did you just phone your officials who are running the hotline to check that all is going well?
I know it's working.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, we'll cross over to Pretoria, and then I'll come back for the questions at the back. Okay, Pretoria, is there any questions? Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. Minister Mareka from Jacaranda FM. Just to ask you if you could elaborate a little bit on our plan for aid there. Apart from the team of about 10 that will be going tonight, are we definitely planning on sending more? If so, when, who, how many? And if people go, how long do we plan for them to stay there? Thanks.
Well, I think we will send the teams, or the number will go up definitely, and will be determined by the need of the hour. Earlier on, we said we will include in the team people who have expertise in going into rubbles like that. But that, with the more time it takes, the more it gets difficult to really save majority of lives that would still be trapped, or people that would still be trapped in the rubble. It's a very painful thing to say, but immediate search and rescue goes on for a number of days. Then you go into a period of recovery. So we will take all that into consideration. It will be foolhardy to sit here and say to family members and relatives, we are going all out to work with the families to support them during this very difficult period of time. And then I start saying to you, we will send 5 people, we'll send 10 people. It is going to be determined by the need on how we go out and deal with this disaster that South Africa has never been confronted with since 1994, where we had this kind of a tragedy outside the country. What I do know for sure is that amongst the team, besides the expertise of search and rescue, dealing with this kind of, we will also have doctors among them, but also to just check on, in some areas, people don't worry much about certification of death and so on. We will do that. Our doctors, as and when they get access, will also go check out on the patients who are in some hospitals in the nearby areas. So how many people are we sending to support families? We will send the sufficient numbers to be able to cope with this tragedy that we've never dealt with before 1994.
Pretoria.
Hi, Minister. Carla Kutsia from The Citizen. My question is, who will be clearing the site, and will we be actively participating in the clearing of the site? And then also, according to the travel agents, how many South Africans traveled to the synagogue? Do we know?
Well, these are the details that experts should go on site and then start making requests on what other kind of support do they need for them to do their professional job, including, are they going to get access to clearing site? Our people are on the ground of the synagogue itself at the moment. More people would be arriving there by tonight. And moving on, we will communicate as much as we should and can with fellow South Africans regarding this very tragic incident.
Thank you. We'll take one more question from Pretoria. Or two more questions.
Good evening, Minister. Simone Herodin for Daily Sun. I just wanted to know, is there any, in the future, to actually take the families of the affected persons who lost persons, if one thinks of the MH17 disaster, there's not a plane crash disaster, but families were actually taken to the Netherlands and to the areas that were affected. Will families be taken across? And perhaps I'm putting you on the spot with the second question. The Minister of Health could answer that. Although Nigeria is not a travel-restricted country, it has had incidences of Ebola. Will there be any special measures be taken in that regard for the teams and people coming from that country? Thank you.
Well, I did say that amongst the officials we're working with in our National Joint Operations Center, we are working with the Department of Health, and we will have doctors amongst team members that will be traveling to Lagos. I said doctors. I didn't go into details. So will family members be assisted to travel to Lagos? We are making assessments, and we did say that we will leave no stone unturned in supporting families at this very difficult time. How many South Africans visit this area at a given time? Plus minus 300, maybe in a month. So we will share with you the exact figures of who, where, how many people or South Africans were in Lagos as and when this tragedy happened. At the moment, we are sharing with you information we have.
We'll take one last question from Pretoria, and then I'll take questions from Cape Town. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Yes.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Minister. I'm Llewellyn Prince of Beeld newspaper. Minister, I just want to know the search and rescue team that we're sending tonight, is that on request of the Nigerian government, or did South Africa decide on their own to send the search and rescue mission? And just another question, you might perhaps answered it earlier. Why did it take so long for South Africa to find out about the collapse of the church? And wasn't there a communication on Friday between the South African government and Nigeria? Thank you.
Well, it is, we believe, the responsibility of the South African government, in line with good governance, that when such a tragedy confronts us, we work as a nation to reach out to our people. We did not wait for an invitation from Nigeria to see how we should assist fellow South Africans. Yes, obviously, the normal traveling arrangements would be done, and that's what is happening. Why? Well, we do have, about whether South Africans were on site, we do have a Consul General office in Lagos. So that's where we were getting information from the time the building collapsed. And we had to work with the Nigerian authorities, and that's when we realized, through the information we're receiving from our own officials on the ground, that things have become really quite serious and tragic. But it's not like we had no information from Friday. Where did we get the information from? From our officials, from our mission that's based in Lagos.
Thank you. I'll take 3 questions from Cape Town, and then we'll conclude the briefing. I'll start with the lady at the back there.
Andy Siwe Makinana from the Mail and Guardian. Minister, I also wanted to know, why did it take this long for our government to announce the deaths? When did you find out that 67 people have died? Secondly, can you tell us about the repatriation of the 67 bodies? Are there any plans? Are you working on any plan to bring them back? And can you give us details around those plans? And lastly, are there any families that have come forward to claim or to say we have relatives that had gone to the synagogue? And what sort of questions are you getting on this call center that you have established? You said you were flooded. What sort of questions are people, or issues that are people talking about? Thanks.
Well, let's start with the last question, that families are calling to confirm that they know of friends, relatives, loved ones who have traveled to Lagos, to the synagogue, and since Friday, they would not have been responding to their phones and so on and so on. It's confirmation that family, relatives, members have actually traveled. Why did it take long? It did not take long. I am saying to you, we started getting information from the time the building started collapsing. But this is a synagogue. So the need to tread carefully and not disturb the ambience of people who had gone to pray is one thing. The next, to say, you don't rush to announce deaths when you have not, or don't start communicating with families. It's not done anywhere else. Thirdly, as I was coming down now, I was listening to a radio and I heard that indeed South Africans, maybe we should take this opportunity to appeal to South Africans to register our presence when we travel abroad through the ROSA, because it helps us so that we are not first reported as missing persons after weeks and weeks. It could have taken longer if we did not have a consulate general office on the ground. But also, countries differ. Without going into the details thereof, can we please just focus on the need of the hour? Let's help. Let's hold hands of fellow South Africans who are bereaved at the moment, who are mourning the passing of their loved ones, and let's assist them indeed to go through this very painful period. Let's ask the more technical questions later when we've dealt with the immediate. This incident had happened in a foreign country. But having said that, we will leave no stone unturned in making sure that we work with families to bring back their loved ones back to South Africa. Search and rescue and recover, the bodies of those deceased. It's one of the major focus at the moment for the South African government, working together with the affected families.
Thank you very much, Minister. My name is Vuyani Green. Let me declare up front, I lost a cousin in that incident. I last spoke to him on Thursday evening. I'm not going to go to the first question, why has it taken so long? Over the weekend, I was in contact with Clayson and Nelson, didn't get any response. And I was given a number, phoned that number, it just rang. There was no one to pick up that number. Now, I just want to find out this time around, what guarantee can you give us that when we call that number, we're going to get cooperation from your officials? Lastly, when will you've been saying that you leave no stone unturned to make sure that bereaved families, are assisted in repatriating the bodies of their loved ones. When will bereaved relatives or families be sent to Nigeria to identify their loved ones? Can you give us the time frame? Because speaking for my family, who are in the dark, we don't know anything. Thank you.
Well, Vuyani, may I take this opportunity to pay special condolences to your good self and family. I did say earlier on, it's a very difficult time for us too, as a nation, as families, as you had said, but also as government officials, particularly when this kind of a tragedy happens in a foreign country. Because the one thing is to have an official rushing to tell you something that you don't want to hear or that they're not sure of. But when you are affected, you are bound to be impatient. You are bound to want to know the truth immediately. But the information you get should be verifiable, because you can come back and ask, why were you rushing to tell me this sad news when my relative was walking the streets of such and such a city? It's not an easy matter to deal with. Having said that, working together with the synagogue people, difficult as it would have been, and maybe indeed they have not dealt with this kind of a matter in the past. It's not been easy. It's not easy for any one of us. But again, I just want to reassure you that we need to continue working together, that we don't rush to give you information that is not there. But also to say, how soon will the bodies come back home? I just have the fortune of having been an ambassador before I became minister. Countries have laws, and laws differ from one country to the next. Let's answer all the difficult questions when our people are on the ground, informed by the fact that we want to see our loved ones, deceased, alive, injured, taken good care of, and brought back home, even under whichever difficult circumstances we find ourselves in. I had the misfortune at a very young age, when I was ambassador, to work with families to recover bodies, do all the processes and bring back home. It's not easy. You might find that because you are personally affected, you would have loved this to happen in an hour, in 2 hours' time, and so on. But things don't get as easy as we would love it to be all the time. And once again, bear with us. We will not lose or be dampened in our resolve to work with the bereaved families. It's going to be difficult, it's going to be hard, but we are there.
Take one question from the gentleman there, and then I see 2 follow-up questions from SABC and E-News. That will be the last questions, and then we have to end. Okay, sir.
I'm sorry, Minister Paul from Business Day again. 3 times the question has been asked. Will you assist families on the repatriation of the body? And you've given us no
The
with
answer
respect.
is yes.
Right.
We always assist families, but the how is what we should focus on. There's, like I said to you, I had the advantage of having been an ambassador before. But remember that we don't go into the questions of costs and all that immediately. What is important is the family getting all consular services that the family needs? The answer is yes, if I haven't answered that clearly before. And then I won't go into the details of what happens to the deceased body because, that's a very sensitive area. Family and government then deals with the rest. Yes. And
then the question is, there have been some conflicting reports about what caused the building to collapse. Have you received any information on that at all?
I wish I wasn't a woman and a mother. And I would say to you, I am now bothered with wanting to know the technicalities of the building. Vuyani is asking the question about, are we helping to find his relative? Now, if we are going to sit here tonight and start worrying about, the technical questions about the fitness of the actual building itself, then we would not be showing a sense of agency in a disaster like this. Where do you start? What do you prioritize first? And then the other, technical questions follow.
Just the last 2 questions. SABC followed by ENCA, and then we conclude the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Minister, I don't know how your disaster management process is going to work, but I spoke to the NFP leader earlier on who was saying, government should be commended for the swift action, but response. But what you'd love to see is that, the deceased be buried. Is government going to carry those costs? That's the suggestion from the NFP leader, the Deputy Minister, Kamagwaza Msibi. So is that included? Does this family help? You say you will ensure that you give all the necessary support as government. Is that going to include the burial costs?
Let me stick to what I know, which is the reason why we have embassies abroad is to help facilitate, support, work with families when death cases occur abroad, and so on and so on. Assisting families beyond the arrival of the remains in South Africa. Again, can we focus on the need of the hour? Search, rescue, collect the remains. If they are, we are able to do that. Search through the rubble, go to hospitals, check the conditions of those injured, then go to the next step and the next step and the next step. If we are already preparing and arranging funerals when we are still talking to families to send photographs of their deceased, then let's go back to the ABCs of disaster management.
ENCA?
Minister, are you ruling out that this could be related to any kind of terrorist attack? Mr. Joshua himself has said that there was a suspicious aeroplane flying overhead that he thinks may have had some involvement. And very quickly, will you be flying any flags at half-mast in respect of those nationals who have died? Thank you.
President had said last night when he addressed the nation, a disaster and a tragedy of this nature, it's one of its own firsts in the 20 years. So I will leave that major decision to the powers that be. At the moment, we are just focusing on what we need to be doing, as I've repeatedly been saying. Speculations. I would leave it to experts who are on the ground, who are arriving, who would keep arriving until we are happy that we have the sufficient and appropriate expertise on the ground to help South Africans, and just focus on that. That's what we're focusing on at the moment.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the briefing, and thank you to Pretoria. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Minister.
Well, that was the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation briefing the media on the Lagos building collapse, a tragedy for Nigeria, a tragedy for South Africa. 67 South African nationals are believed to have been killed, and we still don't know why it took days for the news of the collapse and the news of those South African nationals killed to reach us. Just some details for those with missing loved ones. You can send photos in for ID purposes. The number given by the Minister, 012-351-1000. Well, that delayed the start of business news, but we can get into it straight away.
SABC Parlement.